It's great when you use old promo pics because you never age. I still look the same, but you've got a little bit more hair.
You do. Yeah, that pic's like 10 years old now. That's crazy.
Jeez. Well, welcome everybody
Yeah.
to two cannabis guys talking about age. Today we're getting into face cream. No, not really. We're here to answer your questions about organic gardening. You guys in chat kind of run the show. I'm going to keep my eye out in the chat for your questions. So definitely ask away, and sometimes I'll star them and then kind of come back to them, try to keep things some semblance of order here. But let's check in with Tad, man. What's new in the garden?
Oh boy. So right now this time I am cleaning up my outdoor garden still before the rains hit and just getting it prepped for the winter. And then more indoor garden, I am running under canopy lights. I have to say, so far so good, except I'm having to learn how to defoliate them properly because it's totally different leaving stuff down below. And I definitely under pruned
Okay.
in my side by side. So I'm learning.
Are you monitoring now? Because I always suggest, monitor your temperature, humidity above the canopy, but also like inner canopy. Are you still doing like an inner canopy measurement and one closer to that underlight to see if it's like a Neapolitan ice cream here? You got 3 different layers of climates.
I probably do. I have a grow sensor that I'm running on the side that doesn't have under canopy lights and at approximately canopy height, maybe just slightly below. So I'm getting a lot of metrics that are pretty interesting, but I'm not doing it on the under canopy side of things. So short answer, no. Longer answer, I'm collecting a lot of data, but it's not necessarily of that particular question. Interestingly enough, because of my setup, I have to have my fan. It's like in between. So I have my 2 beds here, and I have my fan like on the wall here, and it's oscillating. And where that fan oscillates, even at its lowest setting, you can see the canopy from the plants kind of go up as they go further away from the fan. So the fan's obviously inhibiting some of that, but it kind of is what it is due to my setup. You're always making sacrifices in a grow room. They're never perfect, I feel like.
No, but we learn to adjust. And sometimes, you got to know the rules before you break the rules. One of those things with the fan, the fan that's in that corner, I tend to stick my plant, the Kool-Aid man likes to grow a little bit taller than everything else. And I tend to try to set that one in the corner, kind of under that fan. It never gets to the point of like wind burn or wind damage, lack of nutrition, but it does kind of, as you said, keeps it a little artificially shorter than if it was not next to the fan. So I have seen that phenomena as well, and I do try to take advantage of it because in a tent, we're limited to the space that we have. There's always going to be one that's by that fan. Hopefully, people are blowing above and below the canopy. So, yeah.
I'm running Rick James all the way through, all cuts of Rick James. So it's just one, so I can get a good idea of a side by side.
Well, yeah, that's good that you're doing that. You're using the same cultivar, preferably clones from the same plant. That's going to give you the best, A and B example. Because sometimes, even I'll try to, I'm testing things with different seeds. I'm pheno hunting. I'm testing stuff. I'll do different things to different plants, but that doesn't mean they're all going to universally act the same because they are slightly unique. I do see a question coming in already, and we had one in the emails here. So let's actually get to this one here in the email. This was something that came to Brandon. Hopefully Brandon's out there and doing good today. The question was, or more or less the comment, and Tad, this is kind of one of your areas of expertise. The question here is, I wonder if maybe y'all could talk about what could and could not be used to make garden teas, And I'll give you a specific example, which is great. Their example is I heard a grower talking about making a tea using bone meal, adding molasses, and another dry amendment source that I can't offhand remember. Apologies. Okay, almost complete there. But I had them wondering if that's potentially good or bad. Now, when they're saying, was that good or bad? Is it because of the ingredients or is it the combination of the two? Um, how about I readdress the question to start with their first one? Everybody watching the show loves my 50-minute questions. Okay, so question one they asked, could you talk about what you could and could not use to make garden teas? How about we start there?
Yeah. Oh, I just realized my microphone was way over there. Is that any better, by the way? Or
Actually,
does it all sound
that
the
that
same?
does sound better. You sound bassier. You sound smoother, man.
You're on fire with the jokes today. I appreciate that. Keeping it lighthearted. Okay, teas. So yes, what you're describing there, if you're adding, I think she said bone meal and molasses in the email,
Yep.
essentially adding fertilizer. So you're not adding biology. So when we talk about teas, we need to think of them first, like what is the purpose of the tea? If the purpose of the tea is to add fertility, as in to take something like bone meal that is going to add calcium and phosphorus, for example, and molasses, which is going to provide a bit of potassium, a little bit of sugar. It's going to help feed microbes. There's no reason to mix those together, add water, and then water it in. That's just a way to get a good even application. Maybe get the microbes active a little bit faster versus say taking those things and just sprinkling them or scratching them into the soil. But you're accomplishing the same thing. Important to distinguish between a tea that's added for fertility or nutrients and a tea that's added for biology, because you're not putting any compost or worm casting in there. You're not adding any microbial inoculants like microbial mass or mammoth pea or any of those products. So yeah, in this case, like if your plant needs phosphorus, that's a great way to add it. You could alternatively also just top dress it lightly and water over the top, scratch it into the surface. They're going to accomplish roughly the same thing.
Are teas best used as a soil drench or a foliar? Or is it really case dependent?
Definitely case dependent. In this case, I would say those ingredients would be best applied as a soil drench. Um, but there are other things that you could do as say, a foliar. Uh, the molasses, for example, by itself could be used as a foliar if mixed with water, or something like a fish hydrolysate, or many of the microbial based products as well. So it really depends.
Okay. And they did, kind of as you mentioned, compost and worm castings. They had mentioned that there, also fungal teas, and those, as you say, are more biology driven than nutrient driven. Is that correct?
Well, I like to separate those completely. So if I'm doing tea for biology, then the main purpose of that is to add microorganisms. I'm not putting a lot of fertility into it. You'll get a little bit of nitrogen, you'll get a little bit of nutrients, but the main benefit is that you're getting increased nutrient cycling, more beneficial microorganisms in the soil or on the leaf surface. Now, if you're doing a nutrient tea, then I don't add the compost or the earthworm castings, and I really focus on what it is that's the limiting factor in my grow. I won't make a nutrient tea just for the sake of making a tea. I would only do it if I wanted to say apply to plants that are already planted and I don't want to scratch into the soil, or I want to apply and I want it to be less dusty, or it's easier for me to do a application if it's already mixed with water. Those are all considerations when deciding, how to apply a tea.
Can you kind of go overboard? We're talking organic ingredients here, but can you go overboard to A, the point of toxicity, or B, to the point where you throw off your balance in the soil? Like if somebody just is gung ho on their teas, can you accomplish either, or is it relatively safe?
I would say it's relatively safe, but you absolutely can overdo it, and we see it all the time. It's much harder to remove things. And here I'm thinking specifically people over apply nitrogen. Um, they over apply phosphorus, and then we tend to see things coming along that we don't necessarily want, like sodium or chloride. And all of those things can impact the availability of other nutrients. So it's less risky than, say, chemical fertilizers. But yes,
Right.
absolutely.
Okay. I love that. I describe that as the edible rule. You can always take more, but you can't take less. So easier way to it, I guess. And sometimes you
Everyone's learned
find
that
that
one the
line.
hard way. Yeah.
Yes, yes, they have. I'm not saying, yeah, no, we all have. I do see that Brandon is in the chat, and he did make a comment here. The velvet fog. When you pull that mic up, love it. Little Mel Torme action for you. In case anybody here is, under 65 and didn't get that joke, but yes, the velvet fog. Okay, we were kind of talking about calcium a little bit in there. Trent's got a garden says if using a dry calcium amendment to amend soil and using RO water, should CalMag still be mixed in? And again, RO water is deficient of any minerals or nutrients. That's the point of it. And typically you have to add these things back into it because our tap water will naturally have certain levels of it. But this kind of sounds like it may be doubling up and possibly could throw out the balance. But in my mind, Tad, I'm wondering, is like CalMag, when somebody says CalMag, I think liquid. When I think liquid, I think quick acting versus the dry amendment, which is typically slow release. So is this two birds, one stone here? Fix it today and fix it for later? Or is there a risk of just compounding too much of that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't have enough information here to give you a complete answer because a lot of this is going to depend on how much calcium is in the soil and also how much calcium is available. That's why these soil tests are so nice, because they give us a lot of good actionable information, because you could have added calcium and still be calcium deficient. In terms of the water, though, so with RO water, people tend to assume that the water is just H2O. There's nothing else in there. Everything else has been removed. But it's always good to check that with like a ppm or EC meter to make sure that it actually is completely, 0 ppm or very low. A lot of times these filters get clogged or they don't get changed or something may not be working with your RO system. So assuming that the RO is working, it is good to buffer your RO water. That just means adding something that will allow the water to have something to bond with. Typically, we recommend like a micronized gypsum. The reason we don't use something like CalMag is because calcium and magnesium are going to raise pH for one. The ratio of calcium to magnesium in CalMag is typically not optimal for plants. And then lastly, we tend to see high enough levels of magnesium in soils with just from people adding compost and all these other amendments, to where we don't usually recommend adding anything with magnesium unless you have a soil test showing you need it or you have a visible magnesium deficiency on your plant. Those are the only two times we'd ever want to add magnesium. So I would say yes, buffer your RO water. As far as if you added sufficient calcium, really hard to say. It's a good idea to have a good idea of what your pH is. So even as an organic grower, it never hurts to have a pH meter, as well as like a combo meter where you can test ppm or EC of your soil.
And that goes back to a great point of trust but verify. So I'm glad you put that in there, because there are many times, there are times in the garden I have done this and other growers have done this, is we just kind of trusted. We didn't necessarily verify. And mine specifically came up with a pH pen. I calibrated it, but in that middle zone, which is the important zone, it was actually off. And I was wondering what was going on with my plants. My data said everything was good. And then I just it has to be this. Grabbed a second source to double check it. Yeah, that's when I discovered my pen had a big variance in that sweet spot. So Trust but verify, guys. And this one, real
Yeah,
quick, we
calcium.
did kind of. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say calcium is super important throughout every life stage of your plant. It's always a really good idea to make sure that you're applying sufficient calcium. But there's a lot of ways to get calcium. So it really depends on a lot on your pH. So if your pH is low, because you're starting with ingredients like peat moss and compost and perlite or pumice, for example, mixing your own soil, typically that peat moss will drive your pH low enough that you can add quite a bit of calcium up front. That's one of the biggest reasons I like peat over cocoa coir, is because we can start from a lower pH, which allows us to add more calcium into the soil mix. As your pH gets closer to neutral or above neutral, we want to make sure we're switching to something like gypsum that's calcium sulfate that's not going to raise our pH.
Not being a soil builder, I rely on KIS Organics for that, guys. But not having that whole like vision, that's a very interesting. Like the light bulb just clicked for me. Why you start with the peat, because then you can add in these other things that you need without keeping things drastically out of range. So that was a little light bulb moment for me. One other thing that I do hear a lot, and we'll just kind of stick on calcium here, is I've heard other growers talk about you want to front load calcium. Um, to me, that sounds like, oh, just dump a whole bunch in there at the beginning and then you're good. But it can't be that simple, because again, we're always hearing about balance. So if we just abundantly throw stuff in, is that correct? Is that effective? And Little Nugs here gives some examples. He says, I front load calcium. He's got calcium, oyster shell flour, fishbone meal, gypsum, various sources. So front loading calcium, is that something you're familiar with?
So I think what he's describing here is essentially you're adding those things into the soil mix prior to planting your plant.
Okay.
Calcium silicate is wollastonite, something I brought up. Oyster shell flour is like 99% calcium carbonate. It's pretty much the same thing as agricultural lime. They're mined. You may get a little bit more other mineral content from oyster shell than you would get from egg lime, but they're essentially the same. And then fishbone primarily used for nitrogen and phosphorus, but it does contain pretty high levels of calcium. And then gypsum is that calcium sulfate that's not going to impact your pH. So having multiple sources of calcium is always a good idea. If you're trying to raise your pH faster, that agricultural lime or oyster shell flour, that calcium carbonate is a really good option. If you have the ability to raise your pH slower, then using something like calcium silicate, which is wollastonite, is phenomenal, because it's going to give you higher levels of silica, which is super beneficial for a ton of different reasons associated with plant health and disease protection and stronger stalks and just an all-around health, better plants. So yeah, we like to use multiple sources. And then just to further complicate all of it, the particle size of the product that you choose will help determine the release rate. So if you had, gypsum that was larger granules, that's going to be much less available than a fine powder. So a lot to consider when you're thinking about calcium. And then calcium sulfate, gypsum, has a very slow solubility or release rate already. So you can get away with adding more of it without really risking a lot on the back end in terms of too much calcium, just because of the release rates of it. Someone just said we're not broadcasting on our channel. Oh, that stinks. Shoot. Well, hopefully people find it over here. I don't know. We'll have to.
Are they looking at your, because I saw earlier, because I subscribed to your channel as well, I saw your regular Tuesday thumbnail up. I wonder if they're looking at
I
that link versus the
deleted
link
that.
that
Yeah,
we
I made
shared.
one this morning and then deleted it because you usually make it on these Tuesdays, and I hope people didn't get stuck in that. I go back and delete it. So sorry about that, folks. Anyway, I didn't mean to get distracted.
We'll
Seeing
check
the
that.
comments coming in.
Oh shoot. Okay, we'll check that one out here. Kind of keep things rolling here though. I didn't want to gloss over your question here, Air Lafi. I think that is the name. And I'm just saying I don't have good hydroponic experience. Have some, not even enough to be dangerous. Actually, I probably do have enough to be dangerous, but not to be giving great advice up here. But it does kind of bring me to another question. And chat, you guys can all help. Tad, you may have an opinion, but I'll just read out the question here because I feel you here. The question, though, says, I feel like I'm in a whirlwind of information between soil mineral composition ratios and hydroponic elemental ratios, specifically potassium to calcium ratios. P being the highest in hydro, but calcium, and then I probably miss the other in soil. My kind of response to this is soil provides more of a buffer. Obviously, hydroponics, GWC, immediate access to the root. So that is probably going to throw things off or create a difference. But that is an advantage, in my opinion, of using soil. Is it is a little bit more forgiving for newer growers. You'll have more margin of error, more room to mess up is basically what I'm trying to say, and then correct things later if you are using a soil. But I wanted to ask too, Tad, if in case you didn't have an answer to this one specifically, is there a buffering difference, well, between a living soil and a generically bagged soil, like a synthetic soil? Do you have more buffer room in a synthetic soil versus an organic living soil?
Yeah, I mean, you do. So the comments are getting me right now. Yes,
Okay,
you absolutely
I'll
do.
get back to the other comments here.
No, we can keep going here. I need to not read the comments while I'm answering your question. So in terms of the mineral composition, sorry, if you could throw that question back up.
Yep.
In terms of mineral composition ratios, we always look for sufficiency more so than balance. So once we have enough calcium, for example, now we'll balance out the other minerals. For some reason, we have a soil mix, soil test that is like way too high in magnesium, let's say, and we will have to add more calcium to balance that out, even though we may have already hit sufficiency in calcium. So there's a combination there in terms of sufficiency first and then mineral balance. I don't know if that's really answering the question. When I think of ratios, that's how I think of it. So that's a good place to start. As far as phosphorus goes, I do think we tend to over apply phosphorus in general, so people should be careful with that. And then with calcium, yes, you can also over apply calcium and get in trouble that way too. Too much of any cation is going to restrict the uptake and ability of other cations. So if you have way too much calcium, it's going to be much harder for the plant to access potassium, for example. Same sort of thing.
Okay, the good news, as I was just doing the barbershop effect there, not only did Airlify get a good answer to that, the good news is, yes, you are broadcasting on your own channel. It's just not under the old link that you set up. So everybody, hopefully, yeah, you're not caught into that, but this will be available for replay on the KIS Organic YouTube channel. And again, we do this second Tuesday every month here on Chad Westport YouTube channel. They're there every Tuesday. So you catch Tad and Brandon every other Tuesday. Damn, I was going to say, but I've got the hair, but I mean, Brandon, my brother, he's got the dread. So yeah, watch it any place, guys. Enjoy. We'll get back to some of the questions here. Let's see. We answered that one. Another calcium. Oh, that was an original one. Yeah, we did that one. Okay, Tazarello, he had a question here. Question, I'm in a 3x3 by 18-inch high grassroots bed indoors. Are the Asian jumping worms a bad thing, like they are out in the wild? I really hope these things jump, because that's a bad name if they don't. I'm not familiar with them, though.
Yeah, we don't have them in our area.
Yeah.
What's really bad is this, I think it's called a flathead worm or hammerhead worm. They're gnarly things. You have to literally burn them. They're
What?
toxic to touch. You can cut them up into pieces and they'll form new worms. They're highly invasive out of Asia. Jumping worms are also an
Oh,
invasive species, as I understand it, which means they
jeez.
can ruin some of the native ecology of some of the worms that we already have here. Um,
Hmm.
as a general rule, we don't really want to be bringing these things in because they're not native to the United States or our area. Uh, other things to think about are the 3x3 bed, 18 inches. I would fill that 10 to 12 inches. I don't think you need to go more than 12, and I wouldn't go more than 14 in a bed that deep for cannabis specifically. It just plenty of soil. Also, you don't necessarily need to add worms, even red wigglers or African night crawlers or anything like that. They will show up, um, provided you use worm castings and provided you take good care of the bed, water them appropriately. Now, some people still like to add worms, and so you absolutely can. It's not going to hurt anything in your bed. Just one more added expense. So I like people to kind of be thoughtful about that. But um, yeah, stay away from invasive species as a general rule. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't even know where you would get something like that. That's funny. I can find a lot of things in life, guys, but I can't find the Asian jumping worm. It's probably a good thing. Okay, that you said when you add worm castings, so they're probably going to kind of show up. Is there such a thing as too many worms in a bed? Is that maybe going to throw off the soil composition or create any dangers over time? Like, what would a time frame be to cause some irregularities, if that's even possible, with an abundance of worms?
Yeah. So what worms are really good? They're essentially shredders in the soil. So they take organic matter and break it down into smaller pieces. They're phenomenally efficient at that. And in general, most plants will benefit from worms in the soil. Um, there are some instances where worms are actually highly destructive. Worms were not native to North America, and so certain species, like up in Canada, for example, of certain trees, I believe, where the organic matter is being broken down too rapidly by worms being in the soil, are causing some ecological issues there. But for cannabis plants, veggies, I haven't seen a situation where too many worms um, cause issue. I mean, the only thing would be is the physical properties of your soil will change over time as your soil, the tilth changes. You'll end up with, more and more bulk density in your soil as it collapses. So there you may need to add aeration or potentially mix up your soil a little more, till it to fix that. But in general, I think worms are a pretty safe thing to add your.
Okay, good. I won't tell my friend DP though, because he's constantly asking me to get a worm bin going, and I've resisted. But he is happy because I have moved more towards organics, and I'm using, the nutrient pack and the bloom booster from you guys at KIS Organics. So he is happy. He's still waiting
Nice.
for me to get a worm bin, but I'm not going there. But shout out to DP. Dad Marino here has a question. So this has kind of been in the news lately. There is a measure that was passed by the Senate going to the House to kind of maybe get things moving here. We'll leave the politics out. Part of it, though, was a basically getting rid of hemp. And his question here says, do you believe there will be an increased price for magic beans from breeders with the ban and all of that? Again, it's still new. It still could possibly be rewritten. I need to read the specific text because words, commas, periods, they matter, as we all know from the THC debacle. But so far from what I'm seeing, is they're going to ban any intoxicating hemp product, whether it be a constituent made through hemp like Delta 8, whether it be any hemp with THC even below the 0.03. But from what I'm hearing, again, specificity matters. If it's intoxicating hemp, I have never known anybody or anything to become intoxicated off of a seed. So we will wait and see what the final language is. We'll see if this remains in this current measure. There is also a wind down clause. That's something that a lot of people don't understand, but it's a wind down clause. They would ban it today. You can sell it for a year or up to 12 months. That allows businesses that have invested in the industry to ramp down, get rid of inventory. So there still may be a year grace period. That's if anything does happen. But right now, I'm holding on to that hope that the specific word of intoxifying hemp, or yeah, hopefully that's going to be it. Because again, nobody gets intoxicated off of seeds. So that's my take on it, Tad. I don't think you have a take, or don't know, or what, have you heard anything?
I don't know. And not to get political, we may not even have the enforcement staffing to ever enforce a policy like this, depending on what direction the government takes it. So I don't know that I have a huge opinion on it, other than I think we need regulation, because I think regulation protects consumers from people, putting Eagle 90 and paclobutrazol in
Yep.
the weed and then selling it. So I think on
Absolutely.
that hand, regulation is absolutely good. On the other hand, with the excessive taxation and all the, all the horrible ways that this has been treated with banking, and the legality around it, is all of that is obviously awful. So somewhere in between those two extremes, I think exists something that's actually good for cannabis. I just don't think we're there, and I don't know that this is necessarily a move in the right direction either. I will say the one thing I do think that is important is this Delta 8 crap from hemp that people are able to put into drinks and then sell online, and essentially make it so these, state producers aren't able to sell. You have people following the rules, these commercial state producers that are testing their product, putting out something on the shelves for you. The fact that people can skirt this in multi-state and monopolize the market, and I would like to see some regulation around that, so that we're supporting, small Washington growers, or small Maine growers, or whatever state you live in. That's really all I have on it.
I'm a THC hater. I hate on that fact. It's the same reason why the Washington med system collapsed. It's why we can't have nice things. Business will business. But I'll relate it back to like the skate shop model, and hopefully this will resonate with some people. But it's hard to find a local skate shop anymore. But back in the day, the only place you could purchase like the skateboards, or the only place you could purchase the Van shoes, the only place you could purchase, whatever, the Thrasher t-shirt, was at your skate shop. And then, companies, big nationwide multinational companies like Zoomies and other mall stores started offering that stuff, which at face value were like, oh, that's so rad. I could go there, and they got, discounts, and they always have the shirt that I like. And people started shopping at these larger places, like these Delta 8 places. Well, the exclusivity, the thing that kept skate shops in business, was because they were the place you would go to get these things. And the mom and pop shops are going to stand no chance versus the large multi-state operators when THCA exists, because again, they don't have to play by the rules. They don't have to pay the costs. They don't have to have the fees. So yeah, I'm kind of a hater, and that's why you can't find a good skate shop anymore. So don't let that happen to your local dispensary. I'm all for regulation in a reasonable manner. So everybody knows where I stand now, but that's okay. Yeah, I like the mom and pops, man. We need to keep it open for everybody. So somebody throw me a question in chat. I'll get rid of this current comment. There's one from George the Grower here. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, I was saying I saw a bunch pop up earlier in the convo here.
Good. Okay, I'll start scrolling back up. Cutting clones on a clone machine or pucks. Oh, using an arrow cloner or pucks, or the little plugs, I'm assuming. Oh, I'd just love to see you guys do the defoliation. or the foliation things? I'm not fully sure I understand this question. Dad?
I'm not sure I do either.
Okay.
And I know garage growers asked other questions in the past.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
we've answered.
definitely.
So
I'm
I've
like,
always
it's a
been a
name I
good guy
know.
on here.
It's a name I know, so
yeah.
I'm like, sure, question, I'll put it up. I didn't necessarily.
Well, I'll
read
tell you
it.
what, while you're looking up, I'll throw a little something. And actually, I saw craft grower on here, which is awesome. I think that's Gabby, who I've actually met decades ago now, when you owned a hydro shop, but it made me think of hydro shops. And one of the issues I had, not with his shop, but shops in general, is when you wanted to buy supplies for weed, you had to go into a hydro shop. And so one, a lot of them were sketchy. Two, I was looking over my shoulders because I felt like the cops were just hanging out outside, videoing everyone that's going in the store versus being able to order online. And then three, a lot of them took advantage of growers. Like the prices were just insane because with the markups, because they knew there was nowhere else to get this stuff. So I liked the idea that some of these things went online, but now, we no longer have that as a resource for folks, or if you need something because something breaks that day, you can't just go get it. You have to, order the mail now because there just aren't that many garden supply stores anymore. So, yeah, I mean, I think there's a balance.
There is. I'm glad you brought up kind of the counterbalance to that, because there is a give and take. It's hard having a brick and mortar store, especially now because of the competition, with a lot of the drop shipping. And that is typically why we see prices we do sometimes in the store. It's like they've already purchased all of that stuff. So they know we're not going to sell 100% of what we just purchased. So it kind of gets built into some other prices. But there is the ability to be predatory, and that does suck. And yeah, to your point, I imagine there definitely was some of that out there. It's almost like you say the word wedding when you're shopping for anything, and price just went up 150%. So you need it today? You're growing what? Oh, I may have one in the back, but it's my personal one, man. I don't know if I could part with it. What do you got in your wallet?
There's definitely a cannabis tax still in the industry, unfortunately.
Yep. Worms? Again, I'm not a big worm guy. I don't know if I know I can't answer this question. Maybe you can, Tad. Do you have to have only one kind of worm, or are several kinds in the bed beneficial? So basically, is there interspecies competition? We got the Bloods and the Crips. What's going on with the worms? They're so underground. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, first off, in a small container, 5-gallon, 7-gallon pot, it's really hard to keep worms alive. They want a little larger ecosystem. So if we're talking 30-gallon pot or beds, ideally, then you could have a thriving worm population. Most of the time, the issue is watering in terms of how people have issues keeping them alive, is they tend to let things dry out or get way too wet, and that kills off their worms. You could have more than one species of worm in there. Typically, what we see is the Acineta fetida, which is the red wiggler. It's the most common composting worm, and it's what most people get when they buy, castings or buy soils and things like that. That's come in naturally. I haven't seen anyone get established populations of African night crawlers. It's like they're larger worms that live deeper in the soil profile, typically deeper than we have soil for. So I wouldn't too up in the you want to get this worm over another or anything like that. If you use worm castings and you use, like, let's say red wiggler worm casting, which is the most common worm used in composting facilities, then what you'll end up with is probably, if you water correctly, there's going to be eggs in there or cocoons, and then they'll hatch and you'll have baby worms. Or set up your own worm bin. It's really easy to do. It really is. I don't have one now, but I had them for years at the farm. They require very little maintenance. Just don't think it's going to give you like a ton of compost all the time that you can use.
I can see DP has gotten to you already. You're trying to get me to set up a worm bin now too. All right, I'm gonna get you. Rusty Nails here has a question. On an easy cloner, it says bring the ppm up to 200. He added clear res, but there's no ppm there. He says what newts go in. Typically, I just use water in my aero cloner, but in the past, I have used a Clonex solution. It's not the gel that you dip the clones in, it's an actual solution. I think it was about 15 milliliters per gallon, but very, very trace amounts of, like your NPK. That is what I have added in the past. I don't know, Tad, if there's preferred or go-to liquid nutrient that may be organic that goes in there. But I'd also be worried about clogging the emitters over time. If you went too hippie on it, you might clog the emitters. Is there a preference that you have or a bird?
Yeah, clogging the emitter, biofilm buildup, those things can all cause problems. When I did it, I think I did straight water. I did dip my clones hormone solution first, but I think something with some light hormones in it. The clones don't need a lot. Maybe a seaweed extractor that's going to give you some potassium as well as some of the plant hormones associated with seaweed might have some benefit. Oh no, I don't use easy cloners anymore. I made my own way back in the day, but I quickly moved back to just cloning in, little like Oasis cubes, essentially, or equivalents.
Okay. Did it have anything to do with the potential of HLVD spreading through roots, spreading through water? Was that a concern, or was it just kind of independent, more preference, or whatever worked better for you?
I mean, it worked for me. The thing I didn't like about an aero cloner was you get these gorgeous roots and then trying to put them into a container without getting a lot of transplant shock. I felt like it took them a little while to catch up. Whereas if I just started with something like the rooted cube or something, then it was just transplanting was a lot easier. Nothing wrong with it. A lot of people do it. They're expensive. They do require a significant amount of like cleaning and attention to detail on the cleaning, I believe. I for a while, I honestly just stopped growing for a while. And when I did, I threw all that stuff out because I got busy starting up the farm and never looked back. Though to be fair, I just get clones from friends now, like Brandon. So I don't have to clone as much.
That's always nice. Good to have a nursery on hand for you. And a big shout out to Chunky Nugs. He's got that wrench there for good reasons. He's putting up some good information here right now. Again, I'm going to have to, I'm going to trust but verify later. But he says the proposed language, going back to the question about the hemp ban and how would that affect breeders? Is that going to affect prices? Bottom line, does it affect seeds? But he's saying the proposed language explicitly excludes viable seeds from a plant that exceeds the total THC threshold, which is good because prior there was this thing called the source rule. Now, again, it was a gray area, but it was something like you catch an attorney or a judge on a bad day and it could not go your way. But the source rule essentially stated, it's like, yeah, this product that you have isn't technically illegal, but you could have only got it from this thing that is illegal. So that was the source rule the DEA had, which the big watershed moment for actually genetic sales was when they admitted or recognized that they were getting rid of the source rule. So, because this all didn't happen immediately in 2018 when the Farm Bill passed and hemp was all of a sudden okay. There was still a little bit of time that went by, and it was really them getting rid of that source rule. So, if it's allowed to come from a plant that exceeds the total THC threshold, then cool. Technically, seed should still be good. So, we'll see. Wait. Yeah. Okay. That's that. I need to look more into that. I need to read more into it because again, specifics there make a big difference. Going back to the questions here. And I actually saw Brandon did have kind of an answer to this one, or a little response, but it was from Freedomborn. And it says, question, do you know the differences and effects of TSP versus SSP? Which, for people who don't know, thank you for putting this in there, triple superphosphate versus single superphosphate. Also, is TSP available there? It's not available here down under. So can you break that down a little bit, Tad, and maybe explain a bit about these two different superphosphates? Is this a question that makes sense?
I'm gonna go with whatever Brandon said, because honestly, I don't use those things. It's kind of like monopotassium, monoammonium phosphate. I think that's the other map. All of those are technically not organic, and so I haven't really researched or ever used them. It's just outside my wheelhouse.
Okay. And again, thank you for that. And Brandon, hopefully you did get that answer in chat from Brandon already. I'm still kind of scrolling through, but I did see he respond and tagged you in there with some ratios. But the next question here says, can I bottom water silica in my earth box? And that's a question that comes up a lot with like top fed nutrients, but I don't know. Tad, do you want to take that first part?
Yeah, so I would think it's probably okay, but I don't have a lot of experience with it, and I tend to avoid wanting any sort of nutrients or anything sitting in a reservoir for any period of time, because I just think of like bacteria and other microorganisms making biofilms.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
for silica specifically, you might be able to get away with it. Someone else brought up the pH of silica. That could be a factor as well. So that's a very good point. I just don't have enough experience with earth boxes. Honestly, I tend to be a fan of top feeding and top watering in general. But sips do have their place. I know a lot of people really do like them. So yeah, I would.
Yeah.
And personally, I would try and get the fertility in ideally ahead of time. And then if you wanted to add silica, you could easily just top water that and just assume you're over watering slightly when you add the silica.
Okay. And I use the auto pots on different runs. I'm using the Tray to Grow right now and actually just setting up. I need to go route my hose for the 3.9 gallons. But I still top feed with my nutrient pack and my bloom booster. So I kind of really just do a combination. I turn it off. I turn the bottom feeding off for a couple of days, and then I'll turn it back on to allow for kind of a dry back. I found with like heavier, denser, organic living soils, that if you just leave the auto pots on, or, a bottom feeding system, if you constantly keep that reservoir full, it's going to just soak up way more water than it needs to. So you kind of have to assist it, has been my experience. And then when I want to, add in my nutrients, it's after I have had the system off for a couple of days. I'll top feed, I'll scratch it in, I'll hand water once, I'll hand water again, and then I turn the bottom feeding system on, the autopot system. It does surprise me and surprises other people maybe. Just again, the capillary action will actually bring that water to the very top. Like your top layer of the soil will look wet. It will have that wet appearance. So does water move all the way up? Yes. Get to some feeder roots. So that's kind of how I approach using like a bottom feeding system, the auto pot system. That's what I've had success with myself. And then Bob Gnarly here is like, can you get dry back at all with real buckets? Kind of the same thing. It's just you have to kind of manually control that. Organic living soils, you don't want to go too hard on the dry back, but you also don't want your soil past field capacity. Like if you reach in and you grab a handful and you squeeze it, if it's dripping, that's too much water. And I found that really heavy, dense soils will do that if you leave your auto pots on consistently. So keep scrolling through some questions. Tad, are you going to be at MJ BizCon? That is coming up before the
Oh,
next time we meet. It's less
yeah,
than a
not
month
this year.
away.
I went one time. Honestly, felt very corporate. There were a few cool people there, but like for the most part, it just wasn't really my scene. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it's not really our jam, to be honest.
No, it's frick me. But it's just full
Are you
of a
going?
bunch. Yeah, hey, I'm a Chad, so apparently I'm gonna fit in there. Yeah, I know Ben Affleck. Bad naming by my parents. But yeah, I'm gonna go this year. It's my first year. I'm interested in like the Hall of Flowers, kind of that is, the genetics aspect, or not the Hall of Flowers, gosh. This is the voice of the plant. Sorry, that's Sherbinsky, and then Hall of Flowers is something separate. But I'm interested for the genetic aspect, and there's going to be some fun, kind of the home growers down there. But I do want to go and see that corporate side of it. Again, it kind of sucks. There are some companies that I need to talk to while I'm there, but I also like to see what is smart about the big guy, right? Because not all the time, but sometimes we can take things that are being done on a broader scale with people that have had unlimited R&D money, unlimited technology, but we could incorporate that in a smaller scale, or remix it to suit our needs. So I'm just going to go to see what's out there, to see what's the latest and greatest, because I've never been to a true like business expo for cannabis. It's always been the fun kind. But yeah, I'm going this year. It's my first year, so I was hoping I could run into you, but
Well, I wish I had known. I would have carpooled. I might have gone.
true. Yeah, man,
Maybe another
I've never
time. Yeah.
yeah, I've never been to Las Vegas intentionally. I've never wanted to go, so this will be my first Las Vegas experience as well. But I'm freaking tame in my old age. My coffee cup is small, so I don't think I'm gonna get in too much trouble.
Well, you gotta check out In-N-Out Burger while you're down there. It's we just got one here in Washington, but the lines are like 2-3 hours long. Never had. It's
Yeah.
pretty good.
Yep. Petaluma, California. That was the northernmost In-N-Out burger at one point. When I was going to audio engineering school 20 something years ago. Oh my God, 25 plus years ago in the Bay Area. Yeah, I've had my In-N-Out experience and it was chaos.
Okay.
It's basically if you've had Dick's, you're good, man. So it's just a little bit
Yeah.
less grease than Dick's.
Yeah, getting back to
Um,
MJ
yeah, getting back
VizCon
to
though, I just want to say like there were some cool people there. Like I met Cassandra Maff. She's phenomenal. She lives in Montana. She was giving a talk. I went there with BIOS lighting. I helped
okay.
out in their booth. That was a lot of fun. So yeah, there's some good folks there, but for the majority of it, it's not organic focused. It's like how do you grow as plant candy using mineral salts and technology is the big thing there. And then all the different ways of extraction and distillation and all that. Radiation. Yeah, you name it. They've got it.
And that is another thing that I want to see. It's like all of this stuff that like the jackasses are going to be excited about, like the remediation and nuclearizing our freaking weed. They're all going to be like, this is the greatest thing. So I want to hear what their greatest thing is, because that's what's coming next for everybody. And we disagree on it being the greatest thing, but that is, again, that's the leading technology is going to be at this place. So I will be excited
Yeah.
to check that out. I do want to just clarify
We
for
should
chat.
probably thank you. You
Clarify for
started a
chat that
ruckus.
I did. So Dick's is the place where the Swass hang out. If you're a Sir Mix-a-Lot fan, Dick's is a burger chain in Seattle, and there was one up on Broadway. The Posse on Broadway album cover was actually filmed at Dick's. So yes, it's a local burger chain up here in the Seattle area. It's a special place, but Good Lord, the jokes in chat are great. I should have clarified sooner.
It's where you go after going out to the bars when all the bars close. Everyone heads to Dick's, and you get a few burgers. Fries were gross. Fries, a
Greasy.
shake, and
Yeah.
then you head home. Yeah. So,
although I will
tradition.
say, so the Grand Slam. The Grand Slam is if you get the regular cheese, you get the supreme cheese, you get the fries, and the milkshake. If you could go the Grand Slam, then dude, you had a good night and a great bowel movement the next day. Too much information. I grew up on
All
Broadway
right.
in
Did
Cleveland.
question
One more
way
question. I
back
saw
about.
Bingus.
Oh,
Yeah, go ahead.
no, go. Having
This
too
is
much
not the
fun.
normal KIS Organics channel programming. Guys, you've got me. Sorry. This one Bingus had asked a couple of times, and it's always good to see Bingus in here. And this kind of goes back to not necessarily a growing question, but just what we're talking about with the hemp. It says, do you think federal legalization might be on the table with a tax on all THC products to add to the coffers of the federal government? Money is always a great motivator for them. I've always said cannabis will be legal when they figure out to tax it. Will it replace the amount of income and revenue they get from lobbyists against it and the alcohol industry? Because the alcohol industry would be the biggest loser, and so would pharma. So, do you think federal legalization might be on the table? No, I don't. I wish it was, but I don't. Too many vested interests on the other side at the moment. Not enough organization to corral the dollars if it were to open wide. So once they can corral it a little bit more, just my personal opinion without a whole bunch of evidence to back it up. But that's kind of what I think, Bingus. I wish, though. I really wish. I don't know, Tad, if that's even a subject you want to touch or not, doesn't matter.
I don't think we're going to see anything under our this current administration.
Yeah.
But I do think that public sentiment is what's pushed forward major civil change and legalization over time. Right now, it's at the state level. I think eventually, someday, we'll see it happen on the federal level. I don't know if it'll be in our lifetime, but I didn't think in our lifetime I'd have a live channel catching up with my buddy from junior high school talking weeds. So who knows what could happen, right?
Yeah, never say never.
Yeah, we've come a long way in the last 20 or 30 years with cannabis. So who knows what another 20, 30 years might bring too.
That has. It has. We need to, to wrap that up and to probably wrap this up here today is like, we need to continue the fight. It's not done yet. I still think that, the medicinal aspect, we need to remember that, and we need to research that a little bit more. We need to find out the goods, the bads, and the everything in betweens. And that can lead to, a better life for many people, whether that comes in the form of renewable textiles or building material or seizure medication or a new pharmaceutical drug that works off of the endocannabinoid system. A lot of great potentials with this plant. So it's not over yet. Keep growing it, keep spreading the word, keep learning, and do it organically, right? I say so. Tad, what do you have to wrap us up with today? Where can they find you? What can they expect next from you?
Well, I know we missed a bunch of questions this time, so tune in next week and we'll tackle them all. I had a lot of fun this time, though. I will say I really enjoy the conversation. Folks can find us over at the KIS Organics YouTube channel, also on Instagram at KIS Organics. We just started a Black Friday sale, 20% off all KIS manufactured products. And we're going to be doing a further sale, not a further discount on KIS products, but we'll be adding other products to the sale closer to Black Friday. So if you ever want to try our nutrient pack or our soil, this is the cheapest it's going to be all year long. So, yeah. And other than that, I'm getting fired up with the podcast again. So I just put out some new podcasts on lighting. I have more coming. I'm excited to see how this grow goes. And yeah, that's it for me.
Right on. That's awesome. And, again, Westport Blend soil over at KIS Organics. That's where you can find the nutrient pack and the bloom boosters that I use as well. Just kisorganics.com. For me, I've got always more content coming out here. Chad Westport YouTube channel. Make sure you're signed up for the newsletter at chadwestport.com. I got something big coming here in a couple of days. If you're signed up, you will know about it. So if you're not, you won't. So that's all I got for today. Everybody in chat, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you for enjoying my complete off-topicness today, but it all relates. Come on, guys. We'll see you next week for some more questions and some good information. All right, everybody. Take care. Thanks for joining me, Tad.
Thanks, Chad.